Welcome back to Tech Talk with Bill. On today's lesson, I'll be talking about operator precedence in JavaScript. So if JavaScript has ever given you a result that looks wrong, even though the code looks right, today's lessons will explain exactly why. And if you're new to my channel, join as a member. Your support keeps long, example-driven lessons like this going. And if you're new, watch the service now creation of the developer environment that you can see at the end of this video so you can follow along. So you can run all the scripts accordingly into this lesson of JavaScript full course. So JavaScript as a language, it does not guess. JavaScript does not read left right like humans. It follows a strict priority rules. And if you don't control those rules, JavaScript will do it for you. And on this example, you will see, as you read this slowly, many beginners will expect the answer is 20, while JavaScript will provide you 14. And what you're seeing is pure operator precedence. Multiplication has higher precedence than addition. When you're speaking with the machine, there's no debate and there's no exception. And I'll give you more examples so you get a full understanding of how the JavaScript operator precedence works. So let us comment out that we initially written to avoid conflict since they're using the same variable name. So you will see here on line 7 before I move forward, for those who are new to my video, I'd like you to run the script and you will get the results, which is written here as 14. And to get more experience, I'd like you to get your hands dirty, since coding is not like other careers that you just read and you understand. I always believe the Chinese saying, you see, you understand, you hear, you forget, and you do, you remember. So in this second example, you have the same numbers, same operators, but we have added a parentheses. So this will basically change the whole behavior, as you can see here in line 11. The parentheses will run first, and this provides or proves one rule beyond any doubts. Parentheses override operator precedence. And on the other hand, as part of best practices, you put parentheses also for readability and organization. And on this third example, I'll show you about division. Again, JavaScript follows the math rules. Division and multiplication always run first before addition and subtraction, but multiplication will go first before division. Early mathematics says MDAS, or multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction in terms of precedence. Now, I'd like you to run this code before you add any comments to give you an example and experience on how this MDAS, or multiplication, division, application, subtraction basically works. Now, from left to right with same precedence, and this is important, when operators have the same precedence, JavaScript executes from left to right. So the machine language looks at the precedence first, then the direction second. And on this next example, you'll get familiar of the different behaviors of the JavaScript language. So sometimes it will be trial and error, but sometimes or most of the time trial and error doesn't work for you, like this one, where it will be a guesswork. If you have a business rule that you need to follow and you wrote it this way, you need to fully understand how it will behave. Otherwise, your development will be full of bugs. And in this example, JavaScript cannot compare until math is finished. Since you have a comparison here on line 38, so calculations always run before comparison operators. So for those of you who haven't seen the comparison operators, I have added them at the end of the screen so you can always come back and review other subjects. And the basics that you're learning now will be hard to remember. You will be using this all throughout your JavaScript career. So it's good to basically always come back and have review as you do your coding. You have your library with you. until it becomes second to you, that you remember by instinct and also through experience. Now, this next example is confusing a lot of beginners, and it tricks a lot of beginners all the time that you see on line 47, where humans read from left to right, where the JavaScript code does not, because JavaScript finishes the math first before the comparison. So you will compare that from line 39. So we have switched sides. So the math is now on the right. But then again, the machine language or JavaScript does not, because by rules, JavaScript will finish the math first before the comparison. And on this next example is comparison before the logical end. So logical operators only works on Boolean values. So on line 57 is 5 greater than 3 and 4 is greater than 2. So both of them basically are true. So since you are using the AND operator, and of course the result will be true. So JavaScript must evaluate the comparisons first before applying any logical operators. So as I said earlier, that seeing it is something that you understand, but I'd like you to test it, challenge it, and as a developer mindset, you won't believe on it until you basically tried it. And with so many years of experience, one day as you read the code or the behavior of an application, you can see straight away that there is something wrong with the implementation. And you can say, is it a beginner developer or someone who knows what he's doing? So in this next example is and before or. So this is another significant one. So you have the AND operator on the right and the OR operator on the left. So the AND runs first, although it's on the right-hand side. So this is quite confusing. But I'm giving you this as an example, and I will not write my code this type of way because in terms of readability, you're saying this is true or false and true, then it does not make sense. But I'm writing this to give you a fair advantage that you can learn from other people's mistakes instead of like learning from your own mistakes. Then you become more productive. On this example, this is pure precedence, no business meaning, no interpretation. JavaScript, just read it that way. It always evaluates and, which is this operator here, before the or. So I further suggest that I comment out every line of the code, but I'd like you to run the script before moving to my next example so you can prove the theory into your practical sense. Now we can change the result once we put a parentheses, and this is very important, also a best practice, as I said earlier. Same values, same operator, we only added parentheses, but completely it provides a different result. If you're doing your algebra back the days, so this is something similar, but with different behavior. And this is operator precedence in its clearest form. So what you should learn from these examples. So JavaScript follow in this order. Parentheses first, then you have multiplication and addition second. Then you have the addition subscription. So you have the parentheses, and then you have the MDAS. So you number it as like first, second, and third. Then the fourth part is like comparison operator. Then the logical end and the or. And this order basically never changes. And if these examples are finally making JavaScript click to you, join as a member. It allows me to keep teaching slowly, clearly, and properly. Thank you for your support. So one of the key best practices that I'd like you to learn, never rely on the memory of precedence of JavaScript. Always use a parentheses, even when not required. It, it is basically for readability, clarity, for creating clever code. Cleverness will not bring you anywhere. It will just bring confusion, assumption, and hard to read code. And assume that the next reader is already confused and tired. And as you basically help them or help your clients, they will praise you for providing a good and readable code. So the key takeaways, JavaScript does not read left to right. operator takes precedence and controls execution. Parentheses gives you readability and control. You may have the same code, but it can produce different results. So today you learned operator precedence, not as a theory, not as rules to memorize, but through proof and examples. If you understand this lesson, you will stop guessing why JavaScript behaves the way it does. If you're new, I'd like you to watch the ServiceNow developer environment setup at the end of this video and watch the previous lessons that will make you a JavaScript expert. And don't forget to join as a member to support my channel, Tech Talk with Bill. I'll see you on my next lesson.